Shots in the Dark contains graphic depictions of events that may not be suitable for all listeners. We encourage all of our listeners to be open-minded and engage in dialogue with us through any of our social media accounts or email.
Who are you?
I'm a bad mom.
Hello, coming to you from a sexy dad pose in a living room in a crooked house. Shots in the dark!
Hi, and welcome to Shots in the Dark. I'm Ty.
I'm Whitney. Never gonna get to my drink, but that's okay.
I'm sure that you'll find a way to make it there.
Oh, I'm sure I'll build a straw.
This could be a real thing. We could do this. I'm here for you. We should take our shot.
Well, I suppose. That means I do have to sit up, and I don't love that.
Do you want me to just clink our glasses into my microphone?
No, because I'm eventually going to want to drink my thing. I just need to not be in lazy dad pose.
Well, yeah, I just feel like you're going to get Sleepy Town.
Yeah, I'll be like, I'm going to tell you a story about...
Cheers.
Cheers.
Lovely.
And for those of you cheersing at home, just remember, not water, because it's bad luck. High five us. Think positive things.
It doesn't have to be alcohol. It could be, as we've said time and time again, a breakfast sandwich or a deep yoga breath.
Or some coffee.
Ooh, or some coffee.
Yeah, so Ryan, this is specifically for you. Stop drinking water.
You know where I'm at now?
Murder.
I've almost finished an entire bottle of Prosecco, and we have not even begun
To fight.
the murder. I feel very strongly, though, that the fact that I've just about finished an entire bottle of Prosecco before I started my story is great. It's a double-edged sword because it requires me to try a little bit harder, which I'm fine with, but also it will numb the pain that I was feeling
When you're crying in
for
the
several
shower.
days. Yes, there was shower crying today that happened because my story is very sad, and it's actually one that I told you the other day that I've tried to do before, but every time I go to do it, I stop because I get upset about it. So it was one that I said that
I'm so glad that you
gonna
always
do.
tell me really sad stories, and I just tell you gross ones.
Well, you remember, let's go back to when I was in high school. You remember when I went to those poetry slams and coffee house?
That you told me that you went to, yes.
Here's a gay boy reading you a sad poem.
Dear diary.
Mood. Apathetic. Of course, I'm going to tell you a sad story. My story is one that we've talked about before. All the champagne definitely helps.
I bring the champagne.
Today, I'm going to talk to you about the murders of Channon Christian and Chris Newsome.
Okay.
Big, hefty trigger warning on this one.
One that you backed up in a truck.
Back it up in a truck. It's not a trigger warning we've never done before. It's kind of a reoccurring theme in the story, though, so if you're sensitive to sexual assault, this is not going to maybe be a story for you. So if that's the case, perhaps fast forward to the paranormal half. Like I said, this case, it makes me very sad just doing the research on it. So if I were somebody who were even more sensitive to those topics than I already am, I don't imagine that I would want to hear it replayed for me.
Right.
Before we begin, champagne break. Channon Christian was born April 29th, 1985. She had moved with her family from Louisiana to Tennessee in 1997. After graduating high school in 2003, she attended University of Tennessee in Knoxville, Tennessee, where she was a sociology major.
Mm-hmm.
She was 21 at the time of her death. She was a senior close to graduation. In a short documentary about this case that was put out by the Knoxville News Sentinel, Shannon's mother described Channon by saying, quote, "She never gave us any trouble. She always did well in school. She was beautiful, but what made her more beautiful was the fact that she was not stuck on herself."
Which is a great quality for humans.
Absolutely. Every photo that I saw of her, she just always looked so happy. Chris Newsome was born September 21st, 1983, and he grew up near Knoxville, Tennessee. He played baseball in high school, at which he was apparently really, really great at. He graduated in 2002. I heard multiple people who knew him in documentaries say that if he really wanted to, he could have gone to the next level with his baseball. He was that good at it.
Okay.
But after high school, he had just decided that college wasn't something that he wanted to pursue, and instead he went into the trades, which is great. That's a great way to make a living.
I did that.
So that same documentary, Chris's mother described him by saying this: anybody that knew Chris was his friend, and he had a smile that everybody just loved.
Okay.
And he looked so happy too. It's so sad. And especially like when I saw photos of the two of them together, it breaks my heart. On Saturday, January 6th of 2007, the two of them went out for a date night and they had dinner at a local restaurant. After they had dinner, the two of them went over to Shannon's best friend's apartment where they hung out for a hot minute. And they were eventually supposed to make it to a birthday party for another friend, but they had wound up at the apartment much later than they intended. I heard that he also had maybe come to the apartment a little bit later than he was supposed to pick her up, which she was not super thrilled about.
Well, I don't also like being ready and then not being able to go immediately, because usually I'm the one that's running late.
Yeah, well, I'm 50-50 on that. Half the time I'm on time, half the time I'm late. So Channon called her parents around 12:45 a.m. and said that she and Chris were still hanging out and that she would be home in a couple of hours. When her father asked her why she was going to be so late, she told him that it was because they were just still talking.
Okay.
Shannon's mother then did what lots of moms do, and she waited up for her daughter to come home, which my mom definitely did that when I was younger.
My parents stopped doing that after I just started leaving and not telling them where I was going, which is another reason that I for sure should have been murdered and probably not.
Yeah, I think I remember my mother doing that all the way up until I was like 20 or 21. And I remember asking her, like, why do you stay up and wait for me? Like, I'm out with the same people every night. You know I'm going to come back late. And her response was always just, you can't help it. When you're a parent, like, you worry. I get it. So unfortunately, Channon was never going to come home.
Of course.
It's late. Channon and Chris, they decide that they're going to call it a night. So they leave the apartment. They go out to the parking lot. At this point, Channon is sitting in the driver's seat of her car. The door is still open. Chris is next to her. He's giving her a smooch, and he's trying to apologize for being so late because she's apparently not super thrilled about it still.
Right.
And he's being a good boyfriend at that point and trying to make it up to her. Thinking about everything, he's kind of apologizing. They're being cute and they're reconciling. And then boom, just like that. The two of them are being carjacked and held at gunpoint, and they are abducted. That's how quick it happens.
Right.
We're going to shift the focus a little bit. There are a lot of names involved in this case because there are a lot of people involved in it. That being said, bear with me. There are 5 people in this case who were tried for involvement. The first one we're going to talk about is Lamarcus Davidson. So he's not a great guy. He's already on parole for carjacking. Okay. And he's a suspect in numerous robberies. He's also a drug dealer, and he's previously served time in prison for all of the aforementioned things. Okay. So he's a criminal.
Yeah, and clearly someone who's preferring to stay on the path of being a criminal forever.
Right around New Year's Eve, his brother, Latalvis Cobbins, comes in from Kentucky to visit his brother, spend some time, reconnect a little bit. Right. And Latalvis brings 2 people with him on this trip. So he brings his girlfriend, Vanessa Coleman, and a friend of theirs whose name is George Thomas. An article from Knox News said this about them. None of the 3 had jobs, money, or vehicles. Cobbins and Thomas were homeless. Okay. They get there, they all hang out, they spend a few days at Lamarcus's house, and then they kind of end up maybe overstaying their welcome a little bit. Okay. Which can happen. Back in the day, in old-timey Louisiana, they used to put a pineapple on your bed when you'd get to the plantation to welcome you, and then if you overstayed your visit, you'd come into your room one day and you'd find a pineapple on your bed telling you it was time to leave. That was the nice way to tell somebody.
Yeah. Hello, could you please fuck off?
Also, here's a pineapple. Delicious. That didn't happen. So Lamarcus, he's getting kind of like upsetty spaghetti, because in his opinion, they're freeloading.
Well, visiting is visiting.
Exactly. And he gets super angry about this. He's just a very disgruntled person, and he starts taking this anger and just placing it on his girlfriend. He's taking it all out on her. Mm-hmm. And it literally had gotten to the point where she's like, peace out, Girl Scout. She's not having it anymore. So she dumps him and she leaves his ass. Right. The timing about this, though, that's interesting to some people, is that the very next evening after his girlfriend leaves him, that's the evening that Channon and Chris are abducted.
Oh, so it's like a retaliatory, well, fine, I'm gonna go do something that I like doing.
Mm-hmm. Or we're gonna do something to maybe make a little money or get a car, go out there, make some terrible shit happen.
Right.
Make ourselves feel better. Which I would think would have, I don't want to say it would have been very routine for him, but he obviously had done this before, so it's not like it's something that he wasn't familiar with. The last person involved in this is Eric Boyd, and he is a friend of Lamaricus, the guy who's renting the house, the one that everybody's staying with, right? He is also a terrible human being, as I'm sure that you can imagine, as he's involved in all of the horror that's about to ensue.
Super duper.
Lamaricus borrows a car from his cousin who lives nearby. So then he, his brother Latalvis, and his friend Eric, they all get in the car, they drive over to the Washington Ridge apartments, and they cruise around the parking lot, and they're looking for somebody to carjack. That's when they see Channon and Chris. And they move in. Eric and Lamaricus, they're the ones that move in on the couple with the gun. And Latalvis waits in the borrowed car behind the driver's wheel, in the driver's seat. Supposedly, they had only planned on taking the car and leaving the owners of it behind and then running.
Right.
But when they were in the middle of this, headlights from another car nearby that had pulled into the parking lot had startled them, and then they forced Channon and Chris into the vehicle. So then Channon and Chris are both blindfolded, and they're bound, and then they're taken to Lamaricus's house.
Okay, which clearly, stop.
Here is where the horror begins. This is where Ty starts to cry in the shower.
Hooray!
This is what we know. At some point after being abducted and brought to Lamaricus's house, Chris was brought to some nearby train tracks where he was then forced to walk barefoot to the location where he was made to kneel, and he was shot repeatedly in the back and also in his head. When his body was found, his ankles were bound with his own belt. He was naked from the waist down. He had been shot multiple times. The medical examiner stated that the gunshots were fatal. They were what had actually killed him. And they could tell from the downward trajectory of the bullets that he had been kneeling when they shot him. He was also very tall. He was 6 foot. So it's not likely that somebody would have been that much taller than him.
Right.
They had said, made it feel like it was really an execution style killing.
Right.
So his abductors then proceeded to wrap him in a comforter and douse him with gasoline and light him on fire.
Stop.
Further medical examination of Chris's body showed that he had also been sexually assaulted.
So their insult to injury, this is just specifically to be like, well, I just am mad about this.
I'm going to say this now, but we're going to circle back around to it later. It most presumably at the time was thought to be by Eric Boyd, who had gotten the most lenient sentence out of all of them. They presumed that it was Boyd because when they had gone through all of their belongings and looked through their cell phones, Boyd was the only one who had gay porn cached on his phone.
Okay.
So Chris was murdered within a couple hours after the initial carjacking. But Channon was kept alive a lot longer. So she was actually held captive at Lamaricus's house on Chipman Street for a whole extra day. Everything that she endured was also horrifying. So she was bound, she was beaten, and she was repeatedly sexually assaulted by all of them in ways that I personally refuse to even get into.
Right.
But it had literally come to the point where there were pools of blood from what they did to her.
Oh.
Because Channon had been repeatedly assaulted by multiple people in an attempt to remove DNA evidence from her body, which I don't know why they thought that this was a thing that works. While she was still alive, they forced bleach down her throat.
I knew it was going to be that.
And then they poured it all over her body, like I said, while she was still alive.
No.
So after they did that, they forcibly put her into the fetal position where they then tied her up and bound her again. They then put her into 5 garbage bags and placed her into a garbage can in the house, not outside, by the way. So she's in the house with them, where she then dies from asphyxiation with her eyes open.
Awesome.
I hate so much when people do that because I just feel like disposing of somebody's remains inside of a garbage can is very telling. It's like you're saying that they are garbage. Like that's how you are treating them. Obviously, you've done horrible things to them, but hate the disposal of a body in a garbage can, you know?
Well, unfortunately, that seems to be just a common favorite above humans, is dumping people into garbage cans.
People are not garbage. Some people are. But we don't dispose of their body in garbage cans. Anyways, while Latalvis, Lamericus, and Eric were at the initial carjacking, we're talking about all 5 of them at this house being a part of what happened to Channon and Chris.